Hello, everybody. Welcome to Be the Man podcast. It is April the 16th for us today, recording this podcast.
It is, isn't it? We're a day
Yes.
behind, aren't we?
I guess we are, but that's okay because
Yeah,
we're
we're
here
right on time, man.
right on time, on the Lord's time in here today.
It was
Just-
tax day yesterday.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Right.
You can't lay down
No.
a podcast on tax day, man.
Exactly. I hope you guys are just having a fantastic
my
week,
gosh.
a fantastic life, a fantastic marriage, and hoping that you're being the man out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
How you doing today, Pastor
You know,
Stacy?
I'm excited to be here with you, Eli. I feel like on some level, it's been a while, but it really hasn't. But it seems like it's
Yeah,
been
it's
a
been-
while since we've sat together like this.
Yeah,
but,
it's been a couple weeks.
not a ton of time, but I miss it when I'm not with you. And it seems like you and I both are living a lot of life right now. To be honest with you, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
And you throw Easter in there from a ministry perspective, and even from
Oh,
a
yeah.
family perspective, that amps up the ante. There's a lot of things come with Easter that crowd the calendar a little bit. They're all great things, but it presses your time a little bit. So I'm kind of glad to be in the aftermath and rolling along, and glad to be here with you guys today. Just excited to sow into your hearts and your lives once again. Eli, today the Lord has got me thinking, and He's had me thinking this week. You know, when we did our live podcast, we talked about every area of being a man. Certainly, spousehood is our focus, but you know, your livelihood, your vocation, how you conduct yourself at work, your brotherhood, how you relate to your brothers in service, fatherhood, if you have kids, and family. That's a big idea and a big part of who you are as a man in the Lord Jesus Christ. But I'm thinking about this week. I don't know why. It's been on my mind. Sometimes the Lord just puts these thoughts in my heart and my mind. Something I just want to share with you guys. Very, very practical, and I hope it's pointed, and I hope it's powerful in your life today. Expectations. That word's just been ringing in my spirit. I think about it this way, that one of the biggest relational landmines, let's put it that way, one of the biggest relational landmines I know in existence can be entitled expectations. To be careful with expectations, you really do. It kind of rocks our world a little bit when something happens that we don't expect. Usually, if you expect something and it's coming, and when it gets there, at least you kind of got some ideas, you're prepared, you got a plan, you got things. But when and especially when you expect something to be a certain way,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it doesn't pan out that way, maybe that's worse than something out of the blue. If you're expecting a thing to function a certain way and to be a certain way, and it just doesn't come at you that way, oh, it can rock your world. How do you feel about that, Eli? Anything come to your mind right off the bat?
That's why I love the Symbis assessment. Hope and I talked about this on one of the podcasts, but we took that, and it goes through expectations.
It sure does.
And you know, whether or not it's the funny thing about, you would have probably not originally talked about those things, about who's going to take out the trash, or who's going to go fill the car up with gas, or those kind of things in your marriage. But when you come down to it, you're like, oh, I guess I did have an expectation.
Yeah, you didn't even realize you
didn't
did.
realize it.
You formulated an expectation, and you thought a thing was going to be a certain way.
Right.
I can't tell you how many couples I've talked to. Well, just not what I expected it to be, preacher. I
Right.
can't even put my finger on this, but it just seems like this isn't what we expected. You know, here we are, we're struggling. Love that Symbis, because the more you can get in front of these things, the better off you are. In any relationship, but certainly in a marriage relationship where two people are coming from separate homes into a single home, and they're just like you and Hope, trying to find out where that home is, what's going to be the rhythm of it. The best you can do, even though you're trying not to set expectations, the best you can do, you have some idea of what you think is going to happen. And when it's not that way, oh, it can be catastrophic in your life. It can be a catastrophe. I want to jump on the other side of it too. I think expectations can also be a catalyst. I think on the good side, on the positive side, I'm not couching this just in a negative light today, but there is a real way you can leverage expectation in your relationship and in your marriage. And ultimately, part of what Be the Man's about for me is helping folks leverage expectations. Let's change our expectations. How good is it when something happens, even if you've planned it, Maybe you go to a restaurant and you've heard rave reviews on it. People have told you what to order. You've went on TripAdvisor. You've went on their website. You've looked at everything they've got. You've already picked out what you're going to order. And you're excited to get there. When you get there and it just isn't what you thought it'd be, maybe you over expected. That's one thing. But what happens when you get there and you're leaving and you go, my goodness,
it exceeded my
that was just more than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And guys, that's the experience that I believe all of us want. Eli, we had the pleasure to go on a little cruise not too long ago, and this is the way I'm telling you. I pray for everyone that they could have the experience I've had. Nick and Rachel were on the podcast not too long ago on Power Couples with Eli. The three of them just did a fantastic job. Eli laying it out there, and they just did a great job responding. Had a good time. Nick's mom and dad, Rachel's my daughter, so Nick's mom and dad and I have just been friends before the kids really ever connected in any romantic way. So it was really good that we had that relationship beforehand, but it has just grown and blossomed. So we were traveling with them, Tammy and I've been on a cruise before, been on several of them. We really like to cruise. I just like it. Some folks don't. You might be out there going, how in the world could you do that, Pastor? I like it. There's a lot of positives to it, and Tammy and I just do well with it. Yeah. So, we just talked to Jim and Michelle. They'd never really been. Michelle had been a kid, and Jim had never been on a cruise. So we just threw the idea out there. We should take a short one, just see how you like it, And so we picked a big ship I knew they would love, and knew that we'd come. And we talk about it. We plan. Jim's a planner, so he's done all the research and everything. And it was pretty cool. It was just 3 nights, 4 days that we were out there. When we got off the ship, I said, well, tell me what you think. What would you go again? What do you feel about that? And he said, I got to tell you, this absolutely exceeded my expectations. Nice. Everything about it was more than I ever expected it could be. And man, that made me feel good because I would have felt bad if I'd have got him to go. And, well, I don't know. Or even, about what I expected. Sometimes, that's not even a positive thought. But when you can get to that place to exceed expectations, that's really powerful, man. And I got a word for you, Eli, and all you guys out there that are in his place. Don't let anybody get you under-expecting about the nature of the marriage relationship, man. You ought to expect a lot from it because you do it right. You go back and listen, not, be the man's great, but what we're trying to do is bring forth biblical principles and stuff I've learned from experience that other people have that help your relationship. My aim is, guys, if you approach it like that and think, man, I don't believe I can set my expectations. I find that Tammy exceeds my expectations just every time. Every time awesome. I set something out there for us, it seems like that for 35 years, she's just been blowing everything I could have thought of away. And that is not, again, we'll go back to the beginning. It's not because I'm smarter or she's smarter or the Lord loves us more. It's just we did some things right, and I hope you guys take that away from this. But don't under-expect, okay, from your marriage. I don't know if you put these principles into practice, Eli. I don't think you can over-expect from marriage what it's going to be like.
Yeah, and I think the idea behind, you always go into something. In most scenarios, you go into them with expectations.
Yeah, you have to.
And that idea behind that is a lot of times, just like what you're saying with Jim, is it would kind of be a disappointment if you went into it and said, well, it's kind of what I expected.
It's about what I thought.
And I thought about that, in the marriage context of what kind of expectations do I have about being married or becoming a married man?
Just life that way.
Yeah, and what is that going to look like, and what sort of expectations do I have? And I think, what you're talking about too is, I think it'd be great to just have those conversations with your spouse or with your girlfriend or the person you're courting and dating. It's really valuable to have those conversations.
It's those dream dates, man.
And when we have those moments where we can lay out those expectations and understand the expectations of one another, then I really like how you've been able to pour into my life, and a lot of other people are giving me the wisdom of not being reactive but being proactive. And that's idea
the whole
of
secret.
Laying out the expectations of this is what I expect to happen and this is what I expect us to encounter. So in turn, that way when we get those situations arise, we're not like, well, about what I expected. No, that was actually
that's more.
That was better than what I thought it would be.
Eli, You're so good at this. You're doing exactly what I expected you to do
Right.
and more, and helping me transition right here. So I want you to think about this with me, guys. So expectations, great landmine. They can go one way or another. They can be a catastrophe. It can be catastrophic if you have certain kinds of expectations. But they can be a catalyst. And you say, well, how can I make sure, Pastor? What are you talking about here practically? Because here we go. Eli always helps me get in the practical. What are you talking about practically? I have a saying that I repeat to myself all the time in all these arenas of life. And certainly it's grand for marriage, guys, especially in marriage, in relationships. Even, well, it doesn't have to be marriage. We mentioned all those ways that we as men enter into relationship in life. But especially in marriage, remember this, that unclear expectations or undue expectations always result in unrealized expectations. Always. Unclear expectations and undue expectations always result in unrealized expectations. You're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
That's why Eli did great segueing in. Let's talk about unclear. That's what he's talking about, okay? Unclear expectations. If I've not communicated, that's where Eli really was in this and bridged us into this beautifully. If you don't ever communicate about expectations, I guarantee you, you're going to be disappointed. You are. If you don't ever communicate them, if you don't ever lay them out there, if you don't love and respect the person that you're in a relationship enough to at least vocalize what you're thinking in the moment. And guys, this doesn't have to be the monumental things. I mean, Eli and Hope are planning a ceremony. I will bet you my bottom dollar there isn't much they haven't talked about regarding this ceremony and that day.
Yep,
I bet they have communicated so deeply and so richly over it that they know what they really envision and what they see happening going into this. And I promise you, dude, come June 8th in the evening, when you're going to find yourself in that reception area and you're going to have talked to so many people, you're going to have a piece of cake, you've danced, your friends are going to be there, everything's going to happen, and you're going to just take a breath and go, my gosh, I didn't even realize this day could have been this good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's, if you communicate well, and it's going to exceed. If you just like, well, let's show up at noon on
See what happens.
June 8th and let's see how it folds out. I promise you, you know, probably not going to be a grand day. I can promise you it's going to be disappointing on some level. So guys, think about this. You just can't assume. You just can't think, well, she knows. Does that make sense, Eli? I mean, she knows. She knows what I'm after. She knows what I'm thinking. She knows what my mindset is. You know, she's asking me these questions, but she really knows all this already. So she knows I'm just gonna expect that she knows and reacts in a way that I'm looking for her to. That is dangerous. If you don't communicate those guys, there's just no way she's ever gonna know. Not at all. Women are, I would say, as a rule, more intuitive.
Yeah.
For sure, than men are. But there's no way she's going to read your mind, and there's no way she's going to read your emotions. She can be as empathetic as a day is long and observant as the day is long, and you can't assume that she understands everything that you're thinking. So communicate those expectations.
And it's kind of interesting, too. I just took a emotional intelligence assessment through school. And they were talking about certain realms of that and what it means and what it looks like, talking about self-perception, interpersonal, emotional skills, those kinds of things. And on average, it's kind of interesting, women tend to have higher emotional intelligence than men do. So what on that same flip side of the same vein of that, if you think that you're going to get away from your wife or your spouse by just saying, well, I'm not going to lay out my emotions or expectations, there's a good chance she's probably already on to you.
Absolutely.
And that's just the reality.
And I'm going to tell you what'll drive your wife nuts.
Yeah.
Well, you know, whatever you want, it's fine. Just do something like that. Say something like that. Posture yourself in some way that you look indifferent, and you're going to just say whatever you want is what you. They do not want that from you guys. They want to know,
and they know. And Hope, I've already figured this out from Hope. She knows that I've got an opinion. I've got something on my mind. She's like, I learned I might as well just tell her.
Just tell her.
Like, there ain't no reason to hold
There's
it
no
back.
need to just, and I don't care what your motivation is. You can be mad, you can be disappointed, whatever it is, maybe just disinterested.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get by, and it's not going to go over good, guys. Would you just have whatever you want? Just whatever you want. Like, whatever. You know what I know. You know what I'm thinking. Just go ahead, do what you think, and it'll be all right. That's not healthy at all. And I promise you, it's going to come back to bite you relationally somewhere down the road. You're going to have a blow up. Somebody not going to be happy. There's going to be a fight over something somewhere. So you can't just assume. You can't just assume she knows. Now, here's the flip side of that, Eli. Neither can you assume you know. All right? Sometimes I make decisions assuming that I know what Tammy's thinking and what she is after. And does she really want to go out to eat on that night, or does she want to stay home? And I start making plans and agreeing to things and doing stuff, assuming that I know the answer to that.
Right.
But that's not good. You need even in the small things to communicate. What's your expectation this week? Tomorrow's going to be a long day. There's that empathy, that understanding that we have in communication. What are you feeling, babe? What do you want to do? If I get an invitation, you want me to tell them we just can't do it? Or what are you thinking? And sometimes I err on that side, to thinking, man, she's going to be wore out. She doesn't want to go anywhere. When in reality, if sometimes I ask her, what do you want to do tonight? Oh man, I'd love to get out of the house. I'd love to go. And that was exactly the opposite of what I thought that she might be thinking. So don't assume that you know. You can't assume she knows everything about you. Please don't make the mistake of thinking you understand her to the nth degree and that you know everything that's going on in her life. You're going to know more. You should know more. You should learn more of her tendencies. But any given moment, we're talking about a moment now and not a monumental plan. We're talking about a momentary plan. Don't assume that you know exactly what she wants to do.
Yeah, and generally speaking, too, on that same idea of men being generally less intuitive, we might oftentimes err on the side of we're just going to make our own decision because she's not saying anything to me or she's not speaking up.
That's what she wants me to do.
She just wants me to do.
Wants me to make a decision.
I'm just assuming that this is going to happen because I'm just don't really care to ask or I know her that well. It's like, no, we are generally speaking stereotypically less intuitive, and it would bode us well. And I've even learned it bodes me better if I just go ahead.
Hey, check in, man.
And get in front of it and say, hey, how can I help
what are you thinking?
What can I do here?
In a private way, not in front of everyone to say, honey, you think you want to go out with all these people tonight? Yeah, maybe get to the side somewhere and in a private moment communicate a little bit before you go crazy and start making decisions, man. So you can't assume that she knows what you're thinking. And do not assume that you know that what she's expecting and how to apply that in the moment or even in the vacation coming up. A little example: the six of us, our girls, our gentlemen, and Tammy and I are going to the beach in late June. Going to be right next door. I'm just going to tell you, going to be right next door to TPC Sawgrass. So in my mind, I'm thinking, maybe those boys want to play golf. I don't know.
Swing a couple clubs.
We're right there, We could just slip across the street, But we communicated with them about it. They communicate with us about it. And, at first, they're so kind. I'm going to tell you, Eli, they're so good to Mom and I. They're trying to do what we want to do. And isn't that our motive?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm trying to find what she wants to do in reality so I can respond in kind to her desire. And that's a great way to posture yourself. But it takes a little while to get to it sometimes. Sometimes the best thing you do is tell what you're thinking. Yeah. And, one of them said, well, gosh, we're only going to be there a few days, and I'm not sure I want to take a whole day away from my and I love it. I love when these young men in my girls' lives respond that way. I'm not sure I want to be away from her. We're only going to be there for 4 or 5 days, so I'm not sure I want to take a day I'd rather be with her if I can be. Well, that's my heartbeat. So didn't disappoint me at all. But it might not have been what I expected. Honestly, I really expected that they'd say, yeah, let's unpacking the clubs, we're going to be, and that's just not the way they responded. Right. So what if I'd have called and made 2 tee times in those 5 days for me and those boys to go play golf? They'd have probably went because they don't want to disappoint dear old Stace. But the reality was it'd be in their mind going, gosh, so while I would have been fine, still I wouldn't have been in tune with exactly the best experience. They might have left going, Okay, that was okay, but let's get back to it, So there's that communication. Don't assume. Don't ever assume that you know everything that your bride's thinking, guys, and certainly don't assume that she understands. Although she's better at it than you're going to be likely. Don't assume that she understands what you're thinking.
Yeah, and then I think in the realm of just every situation you go through in marriage and life in general, there's going to be expectations you have about everything.
Sure.
I think even where you decide to go eat or where you decide to go to church, even down to that, like you
Absolutely.
have a precedent established in your mind of what that's going to be like and what you expect.
Yeah.
And it's important. I think sometimes when you have those unclear or cloudy, vague expectations of something, to talk those things out. I found, and not even just in my marriage or relationship and soon to be marriage with Hope, but just in friendships and other people that I'm friends with, talking about my buddy Nash. Me and him were talking about he's wanting to do a Bible study with the students, and
I
it's
think
like
it's awesome.
that's great. And like, well, what are we gonna do? What's the study gonna be about? Let's figure out a time. And we have cloudy, vague expectations of what it looks like. So we sat down and mapped it out, and we have
Whole lot better.
clear as day.
Whole
So
lot better.
those unclear, vague expectations really sometimes just require a simple heart to heart and say, "Hey, this is what I expect. This is what you
Absolutely.
expect."
If you don't
Probably
do
gonna
it, it's
work.
going to be catastrophic. It's just not going to work out. I mean, it's really not going to come out good if you don't communicate a little bit
Yeah.
and see what comes from there. So unclear expectations, guys, they're always unrealized. It's going to be catastrophic. Quite the flip side. Let's play the flip side. When you do communicate, what I find 90% of the time, things turn out better than what I even imagined that they possibly could. Let's look at this little podcast. I really never expected to be sitting here this far down the road, with the setup we have, with the audience we have. It just wasn't what I expected. It's far more, but it didn't happen without an original plan. We communicated about it, and when we hit a roadblock, we talk about it. And, well, that didn't work. Let's try this, and what do you think about that? And what are you wanting from this? So it's all good. And Eli and I do this week in and week out of when can we make this happen? Because this is the busiest man in show business over here. I tell you, he is. So I don't want to be troublesome to his schedule. He certainly doesn't want to be troublesome to mine. And sometimes even when we communicate, we got to wait a little bit till I figure out, is this a
Right.
good day for Eli or a bad day for? And he's doing the same for me. So
Right.
we've learned that, hey, at a moment somebody's going to say, tomorrow'd be better for me, and the other person's going to go, yeah, you know what?
It's better for
me
me
too. That's really good. So just communicate, and I promise you, it'll always come out better.
Well, and I was going to ask you too, just in that realm, if you could speak to managing expectations for a minute of how do you even in going into marriage. I mean, you could. I'm definitely wondering about that. Obviously, I'm going into it. What sort of expectations should I plan on having? And for the guys out there that are even just starting to think about that, like you're going to have to manage those expectations, and how do you sort of pivot yourself to think, okay, this is what I'm planning on going to happen or what I expect.
Yeah, I think the key word for that you uttered was pivot, and for me, it's flexibility and balance. You have to have those two things as you go into this. I think even with dreams, dreams are dreams for a reason.
Yeah.
When you come to the reality of it, okay, that's what we're shooting for, and that might be the thing that's 20 years down the road. But what do we expect? How does that impact our life in this moment? How do we get there?
Right.
You have to have that flexibility, because especially when you have kids, if the Lord blesses you with them, if you have a family, even family relationships, in-laws, and managing those kind of things, you can have a plan nailed down. You can have communicated about it, but it's going to take some joint management on the two of you's behalf,
Right.
to be able to pivot, flex when, okay, all right, Easter Sunday doesn't look like what I thought it was going to. Okay, let's talk about this and see how we can adjust it. So I think that idea that, no plan is concrete. It is a plan, but it's not concrete.
Right.
I think the same way, if you liken it to the way that you follow the leadership of the Holy Spirit, you and he talk about things, you pray about things, you read the word, you search out for momentary leadership, you search out for that monumental leadership from the Lord in life decisions. But all the while, I've learned that sometimes I can't even process the timeline that he's on. He can be communicating truth to me that I won't need for another 2 years. But if I'm not careful, I'll get so married to it in the moment that I will make things happen that he doesn't intend me to make.
Right.
So it causes me heartache. So I think, when you get to it and you realize, I don't, what I thought was going to happen here, Lord, I'm sensing that maybe that's not the time for it. It's going to, but let's wait another month or something. That happens a lot, especially in senior pastor role, when you got as many moving parts as we have, and you're trying to set vision for a body that is as fluid and as broad as this one. You have to learn that, Lord, I need vision, and you give it to me, but sometimes I have that monumental leadership, yes, but that momentary sensitivity to be able to be flexible in how we walk into that. Really good. Same's true in marriage, guys. You have to have that balance, that flexibility, and I think that clarity really helps you. Once that communication line is open, it's not really hard for me to go back and say, you okay? Tammy, we decided to go out tonight, but I'm sensing you're just beat. I hear you saying, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I've got this to do that I didn't know I had to do. Do we need to make a change? I can make one call, send one text, and it's not going to be a big deal. I think that's what you're asking for, is how you manage those things. And you have to go into it with this clarity of communication and the willingness, the flexibility to say, all right, I'm going to be willing. It's not going to happen every time. And that's what I tell people, it's most of the time when you communicate clearly and make a plan, most of the time you're going to be able to get pretty close to what you thought you were going to do. So I think just that idea that I'm prepared, it's not unexpected. Expect the change to come and say, all right, we're going to be ready for that. If it comes, we'll just do this and make something else happen. That's marriage. Yeah, it was a great question, because that is relationship, dude. You got to manage everybody's expectations and everybody's reality in light of that. So certainly it takes trust and it takes communication.
Well, and I think too, I love how you compared that with our relationship with the Lord. Is a lot of times we have expectations of what we expect God to do for us, or what we expect to get out of the relationship with the Holy Spirit, or what we expect out of the power of Jesus Christ. And I think it's interesting because, that's exactly what our aim is for us to love our wives as Christ loves us, the church. And if we sometimes over-exaggerate or extend those expectations, then we can fall over ourselves sometimes and say, Lord, why didn't you do this for me? I was expecting this. And we get ourselves in a bind.
How good are you at this, Eli? I marvel at how good you are. Because unclear expectations, that's one. It's going to cause a catastrophe. Undue. Remember I said undue expectations. When you start expecting more of your wife than she can possibly give you, man, you've set yourself up for disaster and catastrophe. When she begins to expect more of you than a human being can deliver, that sets you up for a problem in your relationship. So guys, be careful. Part of managing it is don't go so far out there. I tell you what, I'm spoiled to the absolute nth degree in my marriage. I've got just the greatest wife that ever existed. Sometimes I think that there isn't anything I could expect her to do. I get that in my mind. I'm thinking, gosh, I'll just throw that to Tammy. She'll get it done. And 35 years worth of she getting it done has brought me to that mindset. Yeah. But I have to be really careful that I don't just by default put more on her than any human being could possibly carry and deliver on. You'll burn her out. Does that make sense? You'll burn your bride out. You'll burn your wife out. And the last thing you want is a burned out bride. I'm just telling you, you do not want that. And she certainly don't want you burned out. She doesn't want to put more on you than you can bear. There was an old commercial back in the day that hit my mind when I was thinking through this. And it was about, I think it was a perfume, Angelique. Probably doesn't exist anymore. But it was a lady in a business suit, and all this stuff. And this was back when I was a kid. So you're talking late 70s, 80s maybe. And it was a little song that she was singing. I can bring home the bacon. I can fry it up in a pan. And I'll never, never let you forget you're a man. So she was saying, hey, I can go to work for you. I can make money. I can do that. I can come home and then do everything on the domestic front. You don't even have to worry about anything there. And then when we go in the bedroom at night, oh my gosh, it's going to be like some kind of movie experience you never had. And the reason I can do that is because I'm a woman. That was the thrust of the commercial. And somehow this perfume, I think, made her able to do this.
Nice.
It would lasted for years, so they must have sold a lot of it with that little jingle. But sometimes I think that we put that. We know that's not possible.
Yeah.
You could not expect that from a human being day in and day out in a practical realm, in a practical way. But we need to be careful what we expect emotionally, what we expect physically, what we expect even spiritually from our spouse. What part of our stake of life do we put completely on them and say, if you don't succeed in that, I'm going to fail and you're going to let me down? It's dangerous, guys, to put more on your wife unduly. Those two things, I see it all the time. Parents to kids. You put more on your kids than they can bear, and you're not really even clear about what you want them to do. Don't expect it to come out like you want it to. Same with your wife. You're not really clear about what you're expecting in the relationship from any, not just in a physical actions or things you're getting done on a list, but emotionally, connectively, intimately. If you're not really clear about those things, it's not going to happen. If you're asking more than somebody can do, it's certainly not going to happen either. And honestly, Eli, I almost see the second one more than I see the first one, and you wouldn't think that was the case. But I sat down with couples sometimes, and their expectations of each other are, I just don't know who. Yeah. And that's where I go and counsel. I'm like, guys, I really don't know who could do the things. Yeah. I don't know how realistically you can expect this to be done in a marriage relationship, especially when one person just loading it up on it. And that's how it tends to be, is let me do whatever I can get done, but I'm going to push everything else. And if you don't get it done, I'm coming to talk to you about it. Try that. I'm going to tell you that's a catastrophe in your relationship, guys. As a matter of fact, let's go to the positive. Expectations can be the catalyst too, if they're clear and they're doable. Okay, I want Tammy to hit a home run every time, and as a matter of fact, I want to try to lower because I'm going to tell you something. I know my wife well. She expects more of herself than I'm ever going to expect of her. Yeah. So if I can help her lower that bar for herself, defining success and failure for herself, I've done a good thing for her. So, guys, be careful. Those are the two things: unclear, undue, always going to be unrealized, and it's going to be catastrophic in your life. On the positive, Eli and I have talked a lot about, hey, communicate clearly, know what they are, and then be realistic, guys. Honestly, be realistic. Some of the questions on SYMBIS we've alluded to before, I think one of the beauties of SYMBIS is it might point out an unrealistic expectation that you were carrying into this marriage relationship that you would have had to gone to counseling over, and you get in front of it, this unrealistic expectation. So guys, just kind of today, take a little inventory. I'm talking to you, and I know there's ladies listening, so maybe ladies, take a little inventory for yourself. But guys, take a little inventory about how good you are at assuming, or are you just assuming that she knows and you're assuming you know? Communicate, how good are you at evaluating the level of expectation that you have for your spouse and what you think she ought to sow and what part she ought to bring into the marriage relationship. All right. So, hey, we expect our wives to do everything, every time, all the time. Guys, get that out of your mind. She might be able to deliver on it. Like I say, she spoiled me absolutely rotten because it seems to me like she's doing that all the time. Right. And I'm trying to catch up with her. But it would be easy for me to slide into a space to say, oh, Tammy, she's got that. I don't have to worry about that. I don't need to get there either. So let's think biblically for a minute. And one of my favorite passages is Micah 6:8. So in closing, as we land this plane today, I'm going to ask Eli if he'll read this thing, because sometimes we get caught up. This is very illustrative. Is illustrative? That's better. Yeah. But very illustrative of what I'm trying to communicate to you. Sometimes I think I hear people say, what do you want me to do, Lord? I don't know what the Lord wants from me, Pastor. I just don't get it. I don't know what he wants me to do, and I think sometimes we set the bar higher than we should, because his expectations for us are not unclear and they are not undue. And I think the way that this passage communicates for me, the expectations of the Lord in our relationship, is the level of communication and expectation as far as undue relationships that we need to have in our home. So you read that, Eli.
Yeah, Micah 6:8 says, he showed you, O man, what's good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Amen. So there's not a week that goes by that I don't go back and evaluate myself. Eli ministry people are hard on themselves. I'm just telling you, if the Lord's called you in a ministry, you got people's lives that you're sowing into, you love them, you're in relationship with them. That's the bottom line. You can be hard on yourself. You can expect so much. You can expect more of yourself than you're ever going to deliver. And at least once a week, I go back to this passage and I say, Stace, all right, get yourself realigned. Yeah, you want to exceed. I do. I want to. When somebody's giving me a review, I want them to say, "Gosh, he's up here. He's exceeding all the expectations." I want that from people, but I really want that from the Lord. And He has said to me, "All right, here's clear, Stacey. If you really want to know what I expect from you and what I require of you, here's those things. What are they? There's 3 of them, Eli. What do you see in that text? 3 clear expectations.
To do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God.
Do the right thing, okay? Just do the right thing, okay? Be merciful. Extend grace. I do it to you, so I expect you to be a gracious person. And then I just want you to get up in the morning and walk with me, okay? Don't make this too hard, Stace. Just get up, say, good morning, Lord. Here we go. Good, bad, or indifferent. Because the reality is He just wants to spend time with you, okay? He wants to be in a relationship with you. He wants you to spend time with Him. That's what He wants to do, is do life with you, okay? So that should be the nature of our expectations as we relate to each other as husband and wife, all right? Think if you did those things. What if you just did the right thing by your bride every day, guys? What if you just knew, you know what the right, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire right now. You know what the right thing to do is. Yeah. Most times it's just whether you're going to do it or not. You know what the right thing to do is for your bride most of the time. Yeah. How much mercy, you're going to be a merciful person with her? Are you going to give her much grace, all the grace and more? Or are you going to say, well, I got to prove a little point here today? That's never going to turn out good, guys. It's not. And the best thing you can do is just walk with her. Just walk with her through the days that the Lord gives you. So undue expectations, unclear. Guys are going to be unrealized every time. Catalyst, you can leverage these as a catalyst. Expectations can be a grand catalyst because without them, we'd be so lazy, we wouldn't get anything done. So, you need them, but use them as a catalyst in the right way to help you exceed those expectations relationally. I love you, Eli. What you got on your heart?
I just think the one thing that was coming to me when you were talking about this particular passage was, the Lord's got expectations of us, of what He calls us to do. And I think if I could go as far as to say it may be disrespectful or irreverent for us to expect so much out of Him.
Absolutely.
Or our wives in the same vein of, well, I treat the Lord like He's a genie. I'm going to ask Him for this, and then if He doesn't give it to me, I'm going to be mad. Mm-hmm. Well, it's
catastrophic,
It's
right?
catastrophic because you are actually leveraging these expectations that are unreal, undue, and unclear. And it's the same vein with our spouses, the same vein with our wives. If we expect these million different things from her, expect these unrealistic things from her, and then we don't get anything in return and we're mad because of it, then that's irreverent in a way. And I think it's the same way.
It is. It's doing a dishonor to the relationship that you have. A love relationship is dishonored by that. And certainly, I see people walk away from the faith just because of what you're talking about, Eli. Well, I expected God to do this.
Right.
And He didn't. I'm out. And I see people walk away from marriage because I expected this from her and she ain't delivering, so I'm out. I'm going to find somebody else. And that is never works out good. I'm just telling you, you go find somebody else, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to over-expect from them, and it ain't going to turn out good. And what a word that sometimes from Eli right there. That's a fantastic and a powerful word for today. That we serve a heavenly Father who's capable of exceeding our every expectation for sure. But I'm going to tell you, Eli's right. He's not going to stand idly by and let you leverage that so for your benefit and your good so you can get what you want out of this relationship. He loves you too much for that, and He isn't going to let it happen.
Right. Now, I think about it as don't let it be one-sided. It's like, well, I'm just expect this from the Lord because He's God and He can do whatever, and I'm just going to ask Him for it, and He'll provide.
And He owes it to me.
Right.
That's the mindset. Yeah, absolutely. He owes it to me. That's part of this.
Right. And that's not the way we should be looking at it. But
not at all.
I think it is very applicable and very timely. And I think for all of us out there, this is a great challenge to manage and leverage our expectations in a catalyst type of a way. Yeah. I love that word. That's the new vocab word. Add that to your list. Catalyst. I like
Oh
it.
my gosh.
So guys, be the man out there.
Yeah, we love you guys.
Keep making it happen in your marriage relationships. And I know.
Hey, I want to encourage you to share this. If it's a blessing to you, we're not here advertising trying to build some big empire. What I'm trying to do is if it's helping you, if it's not, great, I understand. But if it's helping you and it encourages you week in and week out, I'd love for you to share it with some people around you. Let them get involved in what the Lord's doing here.
Absolutely. And also, in addition to that, for those of you that are commenting and telling us your appreciation, we appreciate that.
Oh, man.
And I hope that you keep doing that. For those of you out there that are just making your kind remarks and saying how much it's blessing you, we hope that it is and that it will continue to do so. So be the man, and we'll see you next week.
Amen.